Well, I think we have a general consensus now on what the expectation is for K-State from a win standpoint in 2021. And that is 5-6. That's not my expectation. That's not Mitch's expectation. But if we're talking about what the media expectation is, I think we have enough confirmation at this point now that that's basically where it sits. Because most of the time in reporting, you say, hey, find at least two sources, multiple sources. We've got three sources on this deal now. We already knew that the early Vegas lines were putting it at 5.5, right? So right between 5 and 6. We saw that Phil Steele had K-State picked tied for 7th in the Big 12 each of the last two full college football seasons. The team that was in 7th place finished 5-7, so that's about a 5-win projection right there. And then today, I was looking through the Pro Football Focus college football preview, basically magazine. They basically have like a digital college football preview magazine out, and they pick 5.8 wins for K-State. So that seems to be where it's at. You can agree or disagree. I will continue to reiterate, I think this team is about a 7-win team. I'm thinking 7-5 right now. Could be pushed to 8-4. Could be pushed to 6-6. That's within the margin of error. But everybody else thinks it's about a 6-win team. And it's really tough to argue that point other than just to say, hey, we're closer to it. We're probably inclined to be more optimistic. We're more inclined to see the good in what the team can be. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It does mean we have some bias, but that doesn't mean our bias is incorrect, because how many times over the years have we felt like that, been biased toward the team, and then Bill Snyder pulls off like a 2016 where all of a sudden he wins 9 games? That happened a lot. It happened every single year, basically, that Bill Snyder was there. We just talked about the 2012 team that was picked 6th in the Big 12, and they wound up being the Big 12 champs and damn near played for a national championship. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but we are inherently biased and going to be more accepting of, like, hey, this can be a better team than just a 5-win team. So I'll continue to stand by that, but, like, you know, if we're having an objective debate here, I would compare it to how you would feel about like a family member. Okay, if you took just a random person and evaluated Mitch Fortner and his life and his capabilities in life, random person off the street might be like, all right, you know, he seems fairly sharp. Like, that's, you know, he's probably a dude that could do all right for himself. But if you took like Mitch's mom or Mitch's dad,
what's going on? Like
a family member, and you said, hey, what is Mitch's capability in life? They'd probably be like, oh, man, sky's the limit. Like, it would, you know, you get a rosier picture because it's a family member. It's somebody close, right? So we're close. We're closer to it here. We're the family as it relates to K-State football. So we see more potential in them. But like the outside world looks at a team that won 4 games last year, yes, gets a quarterback back, but in Pro Football Focus's case, it's one in Skylar Thompson, who they think is elite off of play action, but just average, and in fact slightly below average when not utilizing play action. They look at a wide receiver core that was tied for last in Power 5 football in grade. I repeat, K-State had the last place wide receiver core in Power 5 football, according to Pro Football Focus. So they look at that, and their thesis statement that they come out with it is the following. A middle-of-the-pack year should be expected unless more players step up on offense outside of Deuce Vaughn. I mean, it's hard to argue that. It's hard to argue that. So we're back now to, like, hey, if you're a K-State fan, you're saying, well, look, I know Malik Knowles has always been hurt, but like, we're hearing really good things within the program about a change in his life, and we've seen the potential that he could have out there. You're going to be more inclined to believe in a Malik Knowles than somebody in the outside world is. And there's less margin for error here at K-State. If Malik doesn't do that, what does the team wind up being? Well, that's a great question, and I don't really want to find out the answer to that question. So that's how you get there. Phil Steele has brought up the example of the schedule and has it as the number 6 toughest schedule in the country. So if you're taking a team with these kind of question marks, can they get another playmaker to step up? Is their quarterback more below average or above average? Can their defense is their defense deep at all? Do they have even enough frontline talent on the defense? And now you throw in a top 10 schedule difficulty. Yeah, man, I can see how people sit there and say, yeah, that's probably like a 5 or a 6 win team. So this is kind of a reiteration of the Phil Steele point. It's really hard to argue like where they come down on, or at least it's hard to blame people for having that as their projection. I still believe more in this team because I am closer and because I can see some of the things that could happen and develop for good. Just as I'm sure, like if you took like Texas Tech and Baylor fans, Tech and Baylor, right, were tied for 7th along with K-State, according to Phil Steele. If you took a Tech or a Baylor fan, they'd probably tell you about Tech's got this transfer quarterback, like what they think he can do and the heights that he can lift them to, and they're going to be more inclined to see the better in that than we would be. And I'll say, I think Matt Wells is very milquetoast and bland, and I don't think he's all that great of a coach. I think you're going to be what you are. You're a 5-win team, just in a different style, and honestly less exciting than Cliff Kingsbury. That's my Tech take. Tech fans going to see it differently. I think there's more history on K-State's side to support that the team would be better than the preseason projection. But, again, back to the Chris Klieman conversation. Like, Chris Kleiman's proved that once, and then he went against that last year in a year where things were very wonky, but he had a disappointing year last year. So that's really, I think, what you're going to see if you haven't already been checking all of this out and what people are projecting for this team. That's what you're going to continue to see. I would imagine, I know that, more on this later in the show, I know that the Big 12 media preseason poll has not yet been tabulated. I would guess that you're going to see K-State somewhere between 6 and 8, maybe even 9, 6 and 9. I guess, yeah, I think you would see them somewhere between 6 and 9. So prepare yourself for that, because that's falling in line with what the expectations are setting up as right now. 5.8, 5.5, tied for 7th, which basically equals 5 and 7. So it's going to take this team proving some people wrong this year to get even back to where they were in 2019. The good news is they proved people wrong in 2019. That team did not have high preseason expectations at all. At all. And Chris Klieman took that team to greater heights than what they probably should have been. So it's an observation that I had today while taking in the Pro Football Focus report. There's actually not a whole lot of variance in what I'm seeing right now from people projecting the Cats.